Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Max Round 30 podcast where there is no overtime. It is week 4, and I am once again joined by Coy from MTU Esports, Jeff from Dust2 US, and I am Jacob from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. And in 30 minutes, we'll be covering all of this week's NA ESEA Premier content. So, to quickly preface one thing, we are aware of the modem and marquee news at the time of recording, but we'll be discussing that next week. So, to get into things, let's get this timer started. And there we go, off to the races. So, in this week's news, we'll kind of get things started out with Vec releasing a preemptive match fixing response via twitlonger. So, I believe you've got some good thoughts on this already.
I do have some good thoughts in it. So, I don't think you need to be like an amazing, detective to realize something is amiss in NACS right now. And of course, every player from Open to Premier has, rumors, and they all have players they want to accuse of match fixing. And I feel like this twitlonger is the first concrete proof we have that there's something rotten definitively in NACS. But at the same time, it just feels so weird that Vec is the one who's like coming out and being like, there's rooting. I don't really know what it's about, but I'm on it, but I'm not guilty of anything. Like, you would assume the best, if this was like a legal court drama, you would assume like the best defense would just be to not talk about it. And like, because if anything, this just primes people's minds to assume there's something either fishy with him or his team. In the pre-show, we were talking about it, and I likened it to like the Richard Nixon. It's like the Richard Nixon defense, where he's like, "There are no illicit tapes of me doing anything illegal," and then he's like, "Okay, but if there is tapes, I didn't do anything wrong." So it's like, well, you're attacking the issue from both sides. Of the tapes aren't bad, but they might also not exist. So it's like, which is it, Richard Nixon? Did you have you been filming conversations in the Oval Office, or have you not, Vec? Like, yeah, I don't know. It's like there's nothing
you say
like
anything at all. Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about it right now, and there's nothing about this, but it just feels like such a miss from him to try to like jump out ahead of the situation, but also do it in like the weakest, most weakest non-confrontational way possible. Because like, you'd think if it was a player who was potentially facing a ban, you'd be like naming names, you'd be providing proof that you're not involved. But he's like, I didn't do anything wrong. But I'm also not going to say like who did anything wrong, if anything. Like, it's just such a waste of time, and it's like either shit or get off the pot. Like,
well, if I'm going to be honest with you, this reads like a statement that was like crafted on LegalZoom. Like, this doesn't read like something that, a lawyer, like, he did not. This is something that doesn't read like, went to a lawyer, talked through some kind of statement. This is like how can I sound legal and have a, like,
how can I sound smart? Well, how can I sound smart?
Wikipedia to figure out how to like be non-implicative to yourself.
Because how can I not implicate myself and my friends? And he went on Fiverr and he searched like 5-star cheap lawyer. Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, like all he really did was just put out this really weak statement and then just associate his name now with match fixing publicly, which doesn't really help in any situation.
It doesn't really do anything for him other than make him the public face of NA match fixing. Like,
yeah, and even on like behalf of like ESIC and stuff, like that doesn't really help them either. Like, it really helps no one. There's no party that's benefit here.
It doesn't help anyone, and it only hurts Vec and his teammates. Like,
right, because like if you liken this to what's going on like with Australia, with Oceanic, like ESIC stuff, like, we didn't get any, like, to my knowledge at least, we didn't get any like pre-match fixing like ban statements like this. Like, it was just everybody after like, oh my gosh, I'm so shocked, which is like,
I didn't do nothing. Like,
that is kind of the right way to go about that, because if you're releasing, like, you're just implicating yourself, like, in the entire way of saying, like, you say, because the way that Vec put it was, I would like to clarify that the alleged fixed match was not played, it was a forfeit loss. Also, there is no evidence of me personally agreeing to anything because I am not involved at all. Like, this,
it's just
goes
it's
on
unreasonable. It's like unreasonably like evasive. It's like it's like I might be part of a recording allegedly talking about an alleged match that I won't tell you about with some alleged people who I won't tell you about. Like,
it's all just a coincidence, guys.
Yeah.
Officer, officer,
I was just smoking weed in my car.
this isn't blood on my knife, it's strawberry jam. I was just making a sandwich when the lady fell over there. Like,
yeah, it's poor. Well,
it's poor.
I have a feeling we're gonna see some more of this, like moving forward as we get closer to the report, because there's whispers here and there that it might be creeping closer, but it's just
why do
not
NA
the right
players?
move.
NA players should just not be allowed like legally to make twitlongers. Like, I think we'd be better as a society if they just can't, like, you get 128 characters and that's all you get to talk about. Like,
I feel like we would get a lot less baiting too. But kind of moving on from that, the next thing that we've got for this week's news is the updated Premier relegation structure. So for season 36, we have gotten a really, really different relegation structure. And our lovely friend over at Liquipedia, as well as Dust2US, oh, and my camera froze. But our lovely friend... Oh, my OBS is... Oh, we're back. Okay. We are back and everything's fine. Okay, we'll leave that in. It's a blooper. But our lovely friends over at at Liquipedia, as well as Dust2US, including Jeff here, have done a swell job of creating a pretty good guide on how to understand this, so I'll let him take it from here.
So what you need to know if you're a player or a fan is that things haven't fundamentally changed that much from last season. There's just more of a gradient because now we have two groups. So the breakdown is, if you're a top 4 team in either Group A or Group B, you proceed to playoffs. If you come in 5th place, you are invited to Season 37, which so far, that's basically the same as it has been for every other season of Premier. Things start to get interesting once you get to 7th place, because so what happens if you're a 7th place team, which Eclipse currently occupies? So theoretically, Eclipse in 7th place plays Group B 7th place. The winner of that match gets invited to Season 37. The loser of that match goes to relegation. Obviously, that's a big change, and one of the upsides of that is that we will see teams who aren't in playoffs play the other conference, which was a concern with the new format, as we'd only see the 10 teams in each group play each other. And so then moving on from that, the 8th place team, which is currently SKDC in Group A, gets sent straight to relegation, which is similar to other seasons. And then finally, we have in 9th place. In 9th place, they will play the team from Group B. The winner of that match goes to relegation. The loser of that match gets relegated straight to advance. And then finally, 10th place gets demoted straight to advance. So the major implication of this is that instead of having 2 teams that are directly demoted, we'll have 3 teams that are directly demoted. And I know that's like something I'm very excited about, because you have a situation in previous seasons where teams will go like 3-13 and they'll somehow manage to survive into the next season. And now we'll hopefully see more teams cut and more teams pulled up from advance. So what do you guys think about that?
So I think at first I was a little bit mixed on it. I wasn't quite sure how the whole cycle between relegation and all that was going to work out. But honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, because there's such a thin gray border right now between like the top of advanced and the bottom of our current Premier teams, like I only see that actually helping. Like, it's only going to give more opportunity for the top advanced teams to actually grow and improve. And like right now, top advanced seem, with the exception of Pain, seem kind of like neck and neck when it comes to like putting up results. So it should be interesting to see how they stack up against their Premier competition, because like looking at these cash cups and stuff and these qualifiers, like there are advanced teams that are putting in a ton of work against these Premier teams. So I'm excited to see that happen in a league format.
Advanced teams like don't win cash cups and they don't make it a close qualifier, but they are always in like the top 4, the top 8 of these things. Like they don't get blown out by Premier opposition anymore. Like they're always in the fight. Like you have teams like Able, Recon 5 Black, recently X13. Synergy, who did decently well in the 2 Dreamhack qualifiers. Teams like that, they have increasingly started to either take a map or play incredibly close maps against Premier, like good Premier sides. So I'm just excited to have more chance for new teams to get in the division, and for some of these teams who haven't performed after 4 or 5 seasons to just finally get thrown out with the bathwater, because some of these teams have completely changed their roster multiple times over, and they just hold on by winning 3 or 4 matches, and I don't really think that makes for a competitive league.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think what's good and kind of underrated is that it's gonna introduce, more of your tier 3, tier 2 orgs into the higher viewership brackets too.
Yeah, because I think this is really cool for 2 reasons. Along with what you're saying, we're starting to I feel like we're kind of getting into that territory where how in EU you've got advanced teams that are in top 25. I mean, with Sinners and other teams like that.
Movie Star Riders.
Yeah, kind of always fighting and kind of being there. And if we're just gonna start seeing that, I think that's definitely a good thing. And kind of alongside with what you were saying earlier, Jeff, with being that kind of initial worry with are these groups ever going to play each other. I think this update to relegation and seeing them fight each other for keep their spot is something that I really like, and I think that's going to be really awesome moving forward. So if we don't have any final thoughts on that, we'll kind of take this 20-minute
one thing I wanted
mark.
to mention is, and because I like what Koi said regarding the whole the gradient between advanced and premier, because especially you would say 2 years ago, premier teams were so much better than advanced teams, and now that distance is closing, I want the 2 divisions to be actually integrated and to see the real effects of teams coming in, teams coming out, because especially recently we've had this thing where with your Vireo pros or the original Imperium lineup, if they get demoted to advanced, they immediately just say fuck it and disband, and they're like, we are not playing advanced, oh my god. And I want premier teams who get demoted to at least keep the core alive and try to get back into Premier. It's unlikely because a lot of these teams I feel don't have that sort of commitment, but I want to see Advance eventually become the lower division of Premier, like it should be, where teams are actually battling to get into the top division rather than Advance just being a separate entity. Really.
So to continue on with that just real quick.
Yeah.
I think that it's also really important to stress right now how, because there's now 4 seasons of Advanced and there's 4 seasons of Premier, teams that survive several seasons are going to be better off than teams that are bringing in players every new season. Teams that are built in an off season now, they have a singular month at most to prepare for the oncoming season. So by having that gradient where you can be in Advanced and instantly go to Premier, or you get relegated and then come back, there's now an actual advantage to sticking through it with your teammates.
That's going to be nice, because you did have that situation where teams would be looking at the abyss if they get relegated, and they're like, well, we're not going to play for 4 months. Can I really convince my 4 other teammates to just hang out over winter break and just wait until the next season? Where now it's guys, we'll play Cash Cups, we'll play qualifiers, we'll play FPLC, we'll play FPL, and we'll come back, we'll try to win Advance, and we'll come back into the division. And I think that's only good for the scene, because that's what Europe does.
There's a direct rail line to kind of keep yourself surviving. You're never kind of in this drought of there's actually stuff going on, especially with Dreamhack quals, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And kind of with what you were saying there, that kind of gave me the thought of, I don't know how good or bad this would be, but that almost brings up that brings to mind for me, what if they kind of started playing around with mid-season relegation to kind of continue to shake things up so that people don't get complacent? Well, because
that wouldn't work, because that breaks round robin, because you can't imagine your SKTC and you have to play Bad News Bears, Extra Salt, GDPR and Mythic, while Watch This has to play Oceanus, Eclipse, Rise, and
What if they
there wouldn't really be a way to balance it.
It doesn't, unless you made it GSL groups. Unless you made it GSL groups, it wouldn't work. So I don't think that works, because ESL still want a traditional sports league where the teams play everyone, and then you have the 1 through 10 and blah blah blah, and then playoffs.
Yeah. I just know that there's some people who are, already kind of complaining about how we have a couple of dead rosters essentially at this point, which is why I think that there might be something there. But I think
this is a transition. I think closing thought is, this is a transition season between the old Premier and the new Premier, and I feel the consequence of that is you have rosters who have skated by without really putting forward competitive lineups, and now we're at a position where they'll finally be pushed down to Advanced, And so that's kind of what I'm hoping for, is that like things will only get more serious and more competitive from here now that the format's worth giving a shit about. So moving on to our next topic, we're going to briefly touch on the Dreamhack Open March qualifiers. And so for each of the qualifiers, you had Recon 5, and RGB qualify through the first one, and you had GGPR and Oceanus qualify through the second one. Do you guys have any thoughts on the qualifiers?
Honestly, I casted the Recon 5 over Imperium game. It wasn't anything really to write home about. And like, honestly, the RBG one wasn't either. I wasn't able to catch GGPR or Oceanus into it. I mean, I would give Imperium credit for making it to the finals for the first open qual, but
I mean, I don't know. I feel that's a bit generous.
Yeah.
Because because the thing is, for people who don't know, there is almost no Premier teams in these qualifiers because of the way the main event for Dreamhack Open March and the closed qualifier are likely to be configured. So for the closed qualifier, you have exclusively Premier sides in that, and you would assume the trend would continue into the main event invites. So a lot of these teams didn't play the open qualifiers because based on the ESL World Rankings, they knew they were going to get some form of invite. So, it was mainly just the few Premier teams who either didn't get an invite, didn't make a decision in time whether to go to the closed qualifier, or aren't good enough to get an invite. And so, until the top 4, you don't really see incredibly interesting matches between Premier teams. There's a lot of stuff going on with advanced teams, and some of them impressed, but like for Imperium, especially in the second qualifier, to not make it to the point where they're fighting Premier opposition is just like another disappointing result for them, I think.
Yeah, they're probably one player away from really maybe threatening for some victories, so...
Is that player balance?
Likely.
Yeah.
So, well, we won't touch too much on that. So to kind of touch on the closed the teams that are going to be in the... oh, shoot, I don't know if I clarified that. Closed qual teams are going to be, let's see here, Extra Salt, Mythic, Secret Club, Third Impact, Recon 5, RBG, GGPR, and Oceanus. And we still don't have the main event invite teams yet. And there won't be any Pro League teams for that. So that'll be kind of just an entirely tier 2 event.
Yeah, because ESL Pro League is running concurrently. So unless, it's not going to happen because all the tier 1 teams are going to be in Europe. So this is going to basically be more Premier best of 3 action. So if there's teams that are in separate groups, this will be a really good preview for playoffs because you'll have teams like Extra Salt, Secret Club. I'd likely see Triumph make it to the main event. You'd see all these teams play that wouldn't normally play each other in Premier. And there's a lot. This close qualifier is probably one of the most exciting events we've had for NA this year, which is kind of funny because it's just a qualifier. But we'll see. We've spoiled it briefly, but you'll see Extra Salt's new roster. You'll see Mythic continue to try to etch out a place in the scene. Secret Club with Frost AK and Axe, they'll play. They're always an exciting team to watch. They're always an exciting team to watch, and I really want them to make the main event. Third Impact, which is probably one of the more generous invites based on their real life results, but they're a team that's like respectful. I think they're a team that's respectful in terms of their composition, their player skill.
They're like the team that's like trying to prove themselves.
I think
that's like a really good chance to do it.
Yeah, this is like a breakwater event for them. Like they need to. There's only 2 slots, so I wouldn't realistically see them, but I want them to win a couple matches. I want them to win a couple matches and play competitive matches in the qualifier. That's kind of my expectation for them. And then same with RBG. They're a team that you probably wouldn't expect to make to the main event, but they're another serious roster with serious aspirations in NA, and you want to also see them do good. And then rounding out the list of teams, you have Recon 5, GGPR, and Oceanus. Recon 5 are another one of those teams where it's going to come down to the wire if they make it to the main event. I personally think they can, but it's
definitely.
But it's one of those things where this qualifier is like a car crash of just good teams all fighting for 2 spots. Like ideally you would want 4 spots for this number of teams. And then GDPR, basically the same like aspirational lineup stage as maybe RBG and Third Impact. And then Oceanus is kind of the weird one because they played the qualifier with Melee and Inshaniac, and we don't really know what their real roster for the main event will be yet. But you would presumably think it'd be the real lineup unless they choose to use the 2 stand-ins, which even then that's a weird situation for the team. And so I don't know if they would particularly do well. And I mean, they would just be plugging anyway, so I don't know if we have really expectations for them.
I think, and then you mentioned in the pre-show as well that there's a good chance that if like teams like Extra Salt get booted out in the closed qual, there's a good chance that they also just get that main invite because you know, we won't have
Dreamhack does this really funny thing where they do their qualifier invites before they do their main event invites. So you get in a situation where they, you know, if Extra Salt doesn't win this qualifier, Dreamhack might look at the ESL world rankings and be like, oh, Extra Salt, would you like an event in the main event? And then you'll inevitably have a situation where, like, let's say they get beat by Secret Club and then Secret Club lose to Triumph. You know, Secret Club would be like, why do they get an invite over us? This is unfair. And then it's just like generic, you know, NPC. Well, they have a higher ESL World Tour ranking, and then.
There was more news on that today too, or actually no, was it it was earlier.
There
yesterday?
Was nonstop news on yesterday. Bad News Bears was saying because ESL just started to count the cash cups for ranking points for some reason, but they didn't decide to count any of the ones before last week. So that was like there was much consternation, and MCE temporarily came out of Valorant retirement to bitch about it. And he's 100%. It's not even bitching. He's 100% right. Like he's like guys, what the fuck?
Concern.
He's like, guys, what the fuck? He's like, how does one cash cup give ranking points and the other cash cup doesn't give ranking points? We won 2, and Secret Club won 1, and Triumph won 1. They're getting more ranking points than us. Like, how can that be? I mean, ESL.
And there's the same number of reputable teams, which I think was like the original concern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, ESL's world ranking is always a work in progress. Like they've never been able to nail it down and make it coherent. So I just hope they take MCE's complaints to heart and add more events to the ranking because, like, you know, NA teams
Note's
deserve
been fighting for it too. Note's been like took up the sword and just dropped a huge Twitter chain about it too. So
yeah, NA
like,
teams deserve to get ranking
noticed,
points because
you know?
these are like your big like NA events. These are like your Snow Sweet Snows. These are like all, you know, the events that are worth playing in NA relative to EU. So let's keep moving on before we, you know, spend the last 8 minutes complaining about ESL's world rankings. Let's go over the match recaps. Jacob,
we got roster changes still. We skipped over roster changes, so we'll kind of touch on those really quick before we get into.
All right, I'm gonna do it shotgun style. So Recon 5 replaced CJ with Austin. Thoughts?
I actually really like that change. I think Austin is a little bit more of like a fresh player, and though he hasn't necessarily been playing like as much or as consistently as CJ, I think it'll be a really interesting change of pace to the roster.
Yeah, and it seems to be working so far. And from my understanding of the roster move is that they didn't have the option to keep CJ. So if you're to choose someone, like Austin's an interesting pick, but I think that team has enough firepower for the Premier level that it's not an issue. So I mean,
he's got the chemistry. It works.
Yeah, they need a fifth player. If he's nice, if he fits the chemistry, if he doesn't cause problems, it can be literally anyone. So I think Austin fits the bill, and I think the team will continue to improve.
Yeah, Austin showed up on Nuke for the quals against Imperium too, so like it just seems like a fit.
Rec replacing Whippy on Rebirth. This is another change that they didn't really have control over because Whippy is going to Ghost Gaming Valorant. But so how do we feel about Rec coming into Rebirth? I think I'm in the same position of you, where it's like
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know how to read this. I don't know how to read this move. I think it's just another like young, random NA player who is sometimes good, sometimes bad. And honestly, Rebirth's roster is just so inconsistent and wild. You don't really know how he fits into like the structure. I don't know how. I don't have anything to say about. Yeah, I guess the only thing is I'm happy Rec was able to survive survive the nuclear bomb of Timmerman. Yeah. Like he got into the lead line fridge. He just flew away to Rebirth because, one, I'm just happy he didn't get banned because obviously, you know, ESEA came to town, pistol pack in, and just started blasting like anyone who was associated with that team.
Yeah.
So I think he could have a good future ahead of him. I mean, there was a reason he's made, you know, playoffs in Premier before on multiple occasions, and obviously they saw something with him on Secret Club. So like.
Yeah, it shows that he has potential and a future for sure.
Yeah, but only time will tell like what he actually does on his team if he proves to be like an asset to this particular formation. And then final change, Rin leaves SKDC.
My only thought about that is that SKDC is kind of in
SKDC is they're in omni shambles right now.
Yeah.
This is like the third player they've replaced this season. I don't think anyone was really expecting this for Ocean's triumphant return to Premier after like 6 seasons. But this team is just like fucked. Like there's nothing like going on here at the old OD SapphireColona.com like incorporated building. Like
yeah,
I don't. Whoever
they
they
don't even know
add,
if their match tomorrow is going to happen.
like
know?
if whoever they add, it's like I don't think it makes a difference. Like I think this team is like relegation. Like this team is like relegation, just like
in a nutshell.
Yeah.
There are no breaks on the relegation train for SKDC.
So now that we're hitting our 5-minute mark, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of take a quick fire through the match recaps for this prior week, and I am going to go through each score, go through the map scores, then I'm going to ask for some thoughts from each of you. So starting on Tuesday, we had Rbg versus Levitate. That was a 2-0 from Rbg. Nuke was a closer 16-13, and Inferno was a blowout 16-6. Any thoughts?
The thing I say every week for Levitate, it's only up from here. Like, they're one of those teams where it's like they don't win, and I don't really think I think they're another team that's relegation bound. I don't really like that they're another team that's relegation bound, but I think that's just sort of the reality. RBG is just a better team than them right now, and that's just kind of the reality of.
Yeah. All right, Koi?
Nothing really to say about that one.
All right. Then next on Tuesday, we had Triumph versus High Coast. That was a 2-0 from Triumph. Nuke was a complete blowout. Overpass was close. I believe they went to OT on that map, but that was mainly because Cooper went absolutely crazy. Any thoughts from you two on that match?
It's happy to see Triumph win something finally against another team that's not just like a random lower level NA team, because this team has been in fucking trouble for a long time. Like Secret Club just takes them for walks to the park and just like.
Yeah.
So like for them to beat High Coast is positive for Triumph, but it's also concerning for High Coast.
Yeah, because High Coast now seems to be on a little bit of like a downwards trend, and they need to figure something out.
They need to there was a lot of excitement for this roster to bring back Boo and bring in RCF, but like they're not as dominant as I thought they would be, because their core. I've been a huge fan of their core for seasons now, and something's either got something. There's trouble in High Coast Town, like. And I hope it's just something superficial with strategies or map pool or rules that can be fixed, because I don't want to see this roster implode, but that needs to be worked out. All right, so let's move on.
We got Wednesday's matches. So first up, Oceanus versus Rise. That was a forfeit because no show from Castro, I believe.
No show from Castro, yeah. All right, and so then Rise versus Mythic. Do we have anything to say about Rise versus Mythic? Day 1, 2-1.
That was a really close game, and I actually really enjoyed watching like every second of it. The Dust 2 game was fantastic in my opinion. Like it was actually really fun to watch.
22-20, I believe, right?
Yeah, it was a really close game all around, and it really showed to me like Mythic was playing pretty good, but like Rise is just a dark horse in like every match they play.
Yeah.
All right, so GGPR versus Watch This.
Don't watch this.
They added some new player. Don't watch. Yeah, don't. The team should be don't watch this. They added a new player like an hour before the start of the match. It didn't go well. They lost. Whatever.
Yeah.
I think the thing is like I wanted to clarify. Like I don't really have an opinion about the players on this team. It's more that I kind of know they don't care, and that they don't really. They're not. They don't try to be competitive, and I think I don't think they really have a future in the division. Like this is like a fun like advanced mixed team.
Yeah, I'll give credit to Jet though for carrying them on Mirage.
Yeah, Jet's their best. Jet's their best player. Jet's their
best
only
player. Positive player for the series for Watch This. So
all right, let's speed up a little bit. Third Impact versus Levitate. Third Impact 1-2-1 Levitate.
RBG versus Rebirth, but Third Impact Levitate. We'll cover that really quick and then we'll go back.
All right, any thoughts? I think. RBG winning exciting, but also Rebirth roster troubles. I think that's the main takeaway is that Rebirth will continue to have roster troubles. RBG, I'm happy they won, but I don't know if that would happen if they had a consistent 5. Third Impact versus Levitate, I think that's the same story that Levitate we always see, where it's like they took a map, they're showing signs of improvement, but I think they're still relegation bound just because there's troubles on that team and they don't cut the most impressive form. Imperium versus Secret Club. Secret Club 1-2-1. I think that's expected outcome. The only shocker there is that Imperium took a map of, which I think is good for Imperium.
Only
but I think
here.
they still
there's promise. There's promise.
they need a roster change before they're super competitive, though. So let's go over matches to watch, match to miss. Just say what match you want to watch.
All right, so I want to see Secret Club versus RBG. That's on Thursday. I think that's going to be probably something that's going to be a playoff matchup later down the line.
I think for me, my favorite match this week is probably Recon 5 versus RBG, just because it's an exciting match between two teams that are contending for playoffs. And Koi?
I'm going to say Rise vs. Extra Salt. It's going on Tuesday. I really, really want to just watch how that plays out between the two.
And then I don't think we really need to do match to miss because it's just watch this again. And
it's just don't watch this. So
it's don't watch this.
So yeah, thank you. So we're out of time here for today. So thank you for watching. I know this episode is going up a little bit late, so thank you to everybody for being patient. We just had a really busy weekend and beginning of the week, so we should be back on track for next week. So thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.
Bye.